No. I'm on Facebook. Non ce l'ho io. Okay. I'm using live on Facebook. Now where is my? Okay. Now where is my meeting? Can't see. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for those who are here. Thank you for those who are following us on streaming from home. Thank you for those who will be following us. Facebook. And to those who are gonna follow us after the dance that will happen. So this conference is part of a series that is called the State of the Women. Is a network, research network that is supported by the Jean Monnet Action. The Women in Religion has been organized in partnership with University of Scranton, and I would like here to thank my colleague Rachel Mandai, who has been, without whom we wouldn't have this conference, and to everyone who has agreed rather last minute to come to Rome. And I think we're going to have a great discussion. We're going to have two panels. The first panel with practitioners, and then a second panel with academics. So we will first start to hear from the ground, what are women leaders in religion facing, and then we will go into the academics. So starting from the left to the right to the left, we have Livia Ottolenghi, who's actually professor in Rome, but you are here in your capacity at University of Sapienza, so a colleague, yeah. But she teaches dentistry, nothing to do with religion, but she is coming here as part of the board of UCE, which is the Union of Italian Jews. Jewish community of Italy, forgive me. No. And then in the middle, we have Chiara Lucifero, who has been the press officer, the responsible for the press and for the Legionaries of Christ during troubled years. She kept the helm and now created an academy, which is an institute, Santa Croce. And last but not least, we have Rabbi Mira Ratz, who is one of the first women rabbis in, not the first. Okay. One of many. One of many. Yeah. That's good to know, especially as a Catholic, yeah. In Jerusalem, correct? No. Haifa. No, I'm in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv. But the school where the ordained is in Jerusalem. Okay. Yes. And we are going to go up to 10:30. Then we're going to have a coffee break, and then we're going to start again. And who wants to go first? First, the rabbi. Yeah, and for the public, you are super welcome to ask questions while we speak or yes. Afterwards. I want to have a Q&A at the end of it. Okay, so thank you for being here, for the invitation. My name is Mira Raz, Rabbi Mira Raz. And I became a rabbi in the age of 40 something, yes. And actually, I was born very in my spirit, in my soul, very close to Judaism. I cannot explain it, but I was raised in a very secular family. It was not a religious family, no rituals, but we were, my parents were Holocaust survivors. And Judaism was a kind of secular religion, as we say, something very strong in our identity as human beings and as Jews. And I think it's from birth that I came with a great sense of wanting to connect with my Jewish roots. And even my family was secular. I was raised very clever, you know, that my especially my mother, but my mother told me, look, you look at the religious people.
don't think that they are the religion. They don't demonstrate really the religion. For example, there is a very strong day in our calendar, Hebrew calendar, which is called Yom Kippurim. And those who don't go to synagogue, never, on Yom Kippurim, once a year they go. And my parents, not at all, not even on this day. But my mother used to say, you know, Yom Kippurim, let's take a book, let's take text, and let's learn what's the meaning of it. What is so great in this day? What's the meaning of it? So this was my religion, not ritual, not especially way of life, but the meaning, the essence of Judaism, the essence of things. I think in any religion, there you have these two levels, the essence, and then the how. There is the what it is, and how you realize it in your life. And that's a free choice. And that's a free choice. And sometimes the way of life becomes the target. I mean, that's the essence, but it's not. It's always the means too, to understand what's the meaning of the action, the rituals. Then it affects your awareness. And then this is what religion gives us, the text. That's how I understand. And it's not mine, it's the traditional way of thinking in our deepest sources, deepest texts. And we have a very special expression, which is called tikkun olam. I don't know if you heard tikkun olam. Yeah. It's to correct the word, to make this world a better place. It's exactly what John Lennon sings in Imagine. And the whole world would live as one. The idea that one God, the beginning of Genesis, created one source, created heaven and earth and everything in between as one being. And if this would have been the awareness of the humans, of the human being, there will not be the Holocaust and not other wars, and not in personal lives, all these quarrels and then the deceit and everything, and evil things. It's about awareness. So for me, becoming a rabbi, and maybe I will say that after serving in the army, in the age of 20, as a secular girl, young woman, I went to the Tel Aviv University and I studied the Talmud. I don't know if you know what the Talmud is, the oral Torah, but it's very, you need to be good, you have to have a good head, you know. And I was great in this. Never thought I will become a rabbi. Never thought even to teach this in school. We had studies in schools for Talmud. It was not on my mind. Just I wanted to know it, to study it, because I was very good at it in high school also. So I was a secular young girl, 20 years of age, and first degree in Talmud, also in movies. Okay. But Talmud, I liked it. And always I had this sense of mission in me. I was born like this. And the mission was to bring the wisdom and the knowledge and the progressive thinking that you find in the oral texts, in the Mishnah and the Talmud, to this life. You would look at the religious leaders and you would say, and you study a page of Gemara or Talmud, and you say, what is the connection between what you learn in this page of Gemara and how they react and how they decide things in the name of religion? It's not the same. It's not the same. I will stop here this thing because I can speak a lot about it, but just I want to tell you that to become a rabbi for me comes from this sense of mission, you know, to create a new awareness in people, and especially in the mind of the Jews, because they twisted, they made our religion something else, something not good. And it's against the origin of the text. It's so easy to prove, but this is not the place. So I was actually, I started my way in the progressive Judaism in Israel because I saw an advertisement in the newspaper about their communities. And I didn't know nothing about it, nothing. But, excuse me, In the advertisement, there was a verse from a very Orthodox rabbi, Rabbi Cook, and he said that the new should be that the old should be renewed, and the new things should become holy. Not only what is ancient and old is holy, but you can renew something, you can create something new from the same roots, and this also will become holy. And I said, wow, that's my Judaism, that's the Talmud Judaism, that Judaism. If you don't know the law in the language in Hebrew, the Jewish law, the Hebrew law that comes from our text, it's called halacha, not law. Law is chok. The Israeli court has its laws, the Israeli laws, but halacha comes from the verb lalechet, to go. So they name the Hebrew law with the idea that it should work, it should be developed every generation with new circumstances in life, with new problems in life. So halacha, the law, it comes from religion, should develop itself, should go, not stay as it was, like this, very conservative, very Orthodox. So to become a rabbi, I was first like a layman. I helped in forming a community in Israel, in the city I live. But then they started to know me in the movement, the progressive movement in Israel, and I got, they asked me, why won't you come to study rabbinate, to become a rabbi? Never thought about it. Come on. I was a teacher, yes, in the 80s. I was a teacher in schools for the Bible and for Talmud. Yes, okay. But actually, to become a rabbi, a priest, a pastor, whatever, it's a teaching. It's to teach. And I was very frustrated as a Bible teacher in a public school because, come on, it's not, you don't go to the essence of it, especially if they are seculars, you know. So I was frustrated, and then came this offer, become a rabbi. It took me a year to say yes. But then, okay, you are accepted to these studies with a first degree in something connected to Judaism that you already learned. If you don't have this, for example, you studied biology, you want to become a rabbi, you have to go and make your bachelor, first in something connected to Judaism. But I already had my Talmud degree. So I was as ready as if I prepared myself, to this career, to this role in life. And I was accepted. It's 4 years of studying in the HUC, the Hebrew Union College, which is all schools around the world of the HUC. They ordain women and men. It studies for both, very egalitarian, yes. And I was accepted. And of course, another request is while you're studying your studies to become a rabbi, you must do your master's from one of the universities in Israel or wherever. But you have to have a master's. Again, you choose something that has to do with Judaism. And my master's, I studied for Hebrew law. It's called Hebrew law. Mishpat Ivri, Hebrew. So, and only then you get your ordination. But I want just to show you that in the end of our studies to become a rabbi, we write theses. And my thesis was, I'll tell you, the Torah. The Torah is the 5 books of the Hebrew Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. That's the Torah, only this. And I wrote a thesis, the Torah, a guide to, so I translated, it's a guide to develop the awareness towards love. And love means the unity of all creation. And then I think it was something inspirational. So people asked me to make a book out of it. And that's the book. You see, the Torah Way to Love. This is the Torah way to love. And this is what I do in life. My rabbinate is for this. With all creature, plant, animal, I don't know what, in creation, between heaven and earth. The Torah way to love. And here, it's kind of a doctorate. Kind of, but why? Because the 51st pages is my debt to the academic world. It's about rabbis, philosophers, that said what they said. And then I show how the Torah says exactly the same thing, but using two words that all these great philosophers, and I don't know why they didn't use it, but it's on Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, that God created man out of dust of the earth, the body, but then he blew in him the breath of life, and the human creature became a living soul. You have a living soul in a breath of life. In Hebrew, it's living soul is one of the all living souls, animals, everything. Our body with the living soul, this energy to survive is part of the natural world. And the breath of life is neshama. And only men got it. Because God blew in it, because it was men and women together. So look, it's not the place to talk about it now, but I want to tell you that for me, being a rabbi that's the flag. You have the European Union. I have my flag is awareness of the one union of all humans. Okay. And I want to tell you that I especially as a rabbi and also as a woman rabbi, I know that we must be, all women, we must be women divers, to dive to the text. If you stay on the simple reading, you get nothing. Nothing. You have to dive. You have to understand, to bring like pearls, like diamonds from the inside of the text and show this to the men, to this institute, to everybody. It's there. We don't invent anything. Just the society with all its, barriers, they lie to us. Actually, they lied. They lied. So if I want to tell you that I feel that I was born to become a rabbi. I was born for this. Because I know to teach. I have this capacity to teach, but I want to teach. I was born to teach this from the text, the religious texts, and to dive, and especially in Hebrew, That's a privilege to study Torah in Hebrew. It's like a treasure that you find. You don't know. So
it's not original in Hebrew.
Of course, it was original in Hebrew.
Yeah, it is original.
Not only in Hebrew, but in the same letters. There are other letters that were developed in the world, Assyrian, but the letter is the same. The same. And every letter is a secret.
So the language of Ben Yehuda codified.
He renewed the Hebrew language.
The biblical Hebrew.
He renewed it.
Okay, now I get it.
No, we can, if you come to Jerusalem, there is the Heichal Sefer, how you say, the house of the book, I don't know. And they have their scrolls that were found in caves in the desert from the second Qumran, yes, and also, yes, from the Bar Kokhba, it was found like 2,000 years ago, the origin scrolls like this. And I can read it in Hebrew.
So it was not spoken, because I remember Ben Yehuda was the first kid who was raised in.
It was spoken.
Hebrew.
No, it was spoken in the synagogues during the whole years, but they didn't understand what they said. They knew to read. They knew to read how to read. They knew to read. They knew the alphabet. They knew how to read it, but they didn't understand anything. Most of them.
I don't know.
No.
So they know to read,
No.
and know to speak.
No, not the rabbis will say. Not the rabbis. No. I mean, people were praying in Hebrew. They were praying in Hebrew. In Hebrew. Yes, it was written, but they didn't understand. Yes.
But also
That's how we kept the language.
No, the letters were used also in a secular, with the secular language. So I mean, Jewish people were writing also the secular language in Hebrew letters, wherever in the world.
But it started in the 19th century. No, not even in the Middle Ages, even Gabriel and others, they wrote in Hebrew. In the
Yes, they
same
wrote in
letter.
Hebrew.
Yeah, they wrote in Hebrew. We wrote in Hebrew. You know, Israelis don't understand the language of those poets, because it's
It's like
it's
ancient
a
Italian.
phenomena that you don't have in the world. It's something special, very special. And this knowledge is for the whole world. It's no way only for the Jews. No way. We should, on the contrary, it should be the knowledge of the whole world, because it advances, it gives us such a great awareness of how beautiful this world really is.
And I think I have a question, but I'll ask them afterwards. Shall we go?
Okay, thank you.
Chiara or Livia, who wants to go next?
Penso che Livia
Let's dig a little bit more and
è naturale.
Livia, and then we go to Chiara, and then discuss.
Some scratch, because of course, I present myself as,
I have neighbors, maybe, I know, family of Lebanese,
yes?
Israel, yes.
Okay. The family of Telenghi comes from the northern part of
I
Italy.
know. And also.
Yes, and I am presently, as Federica was saying, now the responsible for education of the Union of Italian Jewish Communities. And in my general life, I teach in Sapienza, and I am a professor in dentistry and the deputy dean of the faculty of medicine and dentistry. So I teach in my life, not Jewish issues, but my passion is the teaching, of course, and also assist also people. But I want to give a different experience on women role within a Jewish and religious communities in the diaspora. So I mean, of course, what we heard now is an experience within Israel that is, of course, a completely different environment for Jewish people than Rome.
But you know, there are a lot of rabbis.
We will have discussion after.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course, the Jewish minority is a completely different situation. But I have to say that Italian Jewish community, and in particular here in Rome, Jewish people have been living for 22 centuries continuously. And this is a very peculiar situation in the world. I do not think there is another community that has been hosting in bad and good times, of course, its Jewish community continuously during centuries, from the Roman Empire till now. So this is a very, very long story and very, very peculiar, also under the women perspective, because the Jewish tradition, as you could imagine, listening to Mira, it's a complex concept. It's a unique. Mira used the term halakha. I do think also derech eretz, no? So that it's a path when people have their rule, but on the 360-degree in their life. So that's my identity point of view. Of course, I'm not a rabbi, and not because in Italian tradition it's an Orthodox community, so women have different roles. But I do think that in the century, the Italian Jewish community has given to women also the role, representative roles, very, very important. And I will finish my brief presentation on this. But I would like to give you also some information about women in century in Judaism, in Rome, and in Italy in general, because the Jewish women were active in many sectors, economical sector, not only traditional home sector, as you could imagine. They were medical doctor. We had in Sicily the first two women medical doctor in Italy, perhaps also in history. They were two medical doctors living and working in Sicily, Jewish women that were working, and not only there. They were, I don't remember how to call levatrici. Okay, midwives, and also they were working in other fields of the economics that were in the Jewish community in that area. In the same situation, also there were also women in other European countries, but also I would like to say that in the rules of families, also the widows were respected and supported by law, differently from the other outer community. In fact, both in Italy and both, sorry, in the Eastern European, in Ashkenazi countries, the women were also could have the right to get all the wealth from their husbands when they were widows, or in respect to the other community that could not have any economical independence by themselves, nor tutoring of the children when they were widowers, etc. Instead, in the Jewish communities, this was guaranteed to women. Even in culture and education, even if there was not a favorable, of course, situation, because not always and not everywhere women education was supported, on the contrary, but we have also some examples of education and erudition of Torah studies in women during Middle Age in the Jewish community, both in Italy and both also in France and in Germany, and especially daughters of rabbis and daughters of knowledgeable people could study and could study Torah and in the more complex details. So it's a very peculiar situation, even in the Middle Ages. Let's see in Rome what's going on in century. And I do think that you know that in 1555 was established the ghetto in Rome. And the Jewish community, and before the establishing of the ghetto, we have the burnt of the Talmud in Piazza Campo de' Fiori. And that's why the Jewish community was not so knowledgeable in Talmud during centuries, because we couldn't study Talmud here in Rome. And it was burned, and the only copies of Talmud were in Vatican, not in the study place of. But in the meantime, Jewish people were somehow protected and could study, and also, and I must say, I must remember that continuously we were in Rome, so we weren't expelled from Rome, never. And the Jewish community of Rome, that generally is considered culturally and socially of low level culturally and socially, but it's something that has to be assessed newly. Women had also were autonomous, much more than the inside the Jewish ghetto society than the Christian women in the outer society, because of course the dynamics, the social dynamics inside the ghetto were different, were autonomous from the external part of the society. So the women's position in the Jewish community in Rome was very peculiar. And for example, in the wedding dynamic. In the wedding dynamic, there was very high percentage of love wedding and not imposed wedding, even during the ghetto, or since we have divorce, of course it's not something holy that you cannot break. Also, that it's a sort of empowerment for the women within the dynamic of the couple. So the possibility of divorce, and also the active role in working life. There was a study, there was a survey during the beginning of the 800s from the city of Rome. They did in 1927 a survey on the commercial activities in the 12th quarter of Rome, of the traditional 12th quarter of Rome. And in the quarters of the ghetto, Rione Sant'Angelo, the percentage of women that were responsible for the commercial activity was much higher in the ghetto than outside the ghetto. I mean, 60% of the women who were responsible for the commercial issue were Jewish women. So it's a very peculiar situation if you think about the social situation. Afterwards, after the ghetto was open, things changed very much, and emancipation got the Jewish community with civil rights, and it was like that if we drank a bottle of wine, because of course being closed 300 years in 4 walls without rights was very, very peculiar, and it was very difficult for people taking back habit of the civil rights. They didn't have civil rights for 300 years.
So, but the ghetto was closed.
Was closed. There were cancelli, there were gates, and one could exit in some hours of the day, but then you have to go back. And there were limitations also on commercial activities. You could not do any work as you like. There were only certain art and craft that you could
But that was
practice.
dictated by the Vatican?
Yes, of course, it was the Pope. Of course, different popes had more open or more closed vision of because of course you can, you think about the establishment of the ghetto was in the Counter Reform. It was that, but afterwards in 700 there was Illuminism, so it was after the restoration it was also more closed. It depended on the historical moment and on the person. But we were in the Pope reign. So in Rome, of course, in Europe was different things. But I think that Rome is a very peculiar example in history, and I do think can be interesting also in Italy. The Jewish people in Italy has been, after the emancipation, participating, empowering within the Italian community because they were eager of participation. So of course, depending on the socio-economical level, we have, by the women perspective, a lot of women very, very involved in education, very, very involved in supporting the vulnerable part of the community, but not only Jewish community, also general community. So you can find transformation. I got some. The first example I can give you is a woman whose name was Sarina Levi Nathan. She was the mother of Ernesto Nathan, that was one of the most important major of Rome. But Sarina Levi Nathan was a very, very interesting figure because she was a supporter of Giuseppe Mazzini, and she was a politically involved woman for the Italian independence. And she was involved in the Partito d'Azione, and she was involved also in philanthropic, social, and also educational. She created a sort of foundation that its name was Unione Benefica, that whose objective was supporting young women, young poor women, preventing prostitution, giving them education, giving them all the tools for a better life. So it was not only for Jewish people, it was for general people. So, and also other women, I can give you a lot of examples. I will give you only one example that to me is very amusing and interesting. The daughter of Paola Lombroso. She was the daughter of a very famous professor, Cesare Lombrosian. Yes, but he was a very progressive man. It has to be analyzed also under the connection of the time. But Paola Lombroso was one of her two daughters. And she was expert in children literature, children education, and was the one who had the first idea of Corriere dei Piccoli. That was the first magazine for children. Then she was a woman, so she was sidelined, so she couldn't manage. Because she was a woman, she was considered not to be able to manage the Corriere dei Piccoli. But the very, very first idea of a special children magazine was of a Jewish Italian woman. So it's something that can be interesting also in understanding the mood. And at the end, the Women Association was created, Women Jewish Association in 1927, that has already still working, and during the World War I and II, they were very, very active in several ways, supporting in World War I all the families of soldiers, but so they were involved in society, politically, socially, bringing their values inside the society. So I do think that this is the way that we are speaking about women and religion. Jewish communities have a religion, of course, but have a general way of considering people that is in some way revolutionary, because we are all equal in front of God. So that's why we have been not so comfortable in several moments of life, moment of history, no? From the very, very beginning. And after the World War II, because of course many women that were active politically were also deported and assassinated in World War II, all the Jewish community were yes, it was a major wound for all the European Jewry, as Mira was telling about her family. But nowadays, if we think about some Italian Jewish women that we are used to have in our life, so thinking about Rita Levi-Montalcini, for example, or of course, Senatrice Segre, but also in the Jewish communities, we have a women empowerment, because most high representative of Jewish communities in Italy is nowadays women. For example, in the Union of Jewish Communities, we have Noemi Di Segni, that she is our president. And in the most important Jewish community in Italy, Rome, we have the president of the Regno. So they are two young women, very active, very representative. And I do think that also that way is an interpretation of involvement and bringing our identity within our communities and in general in the society. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Livia. We have Chiara and then we have discussion.
Let's talk about discussion, please. I just want to mention the first woman rabbi that was ordained in the Progressive Judaism. It was in 1934, Regina Jonas. We didn't know that. We didn't know that she died in Auschwitz. She was born in 1902 and died in Auschwitz December 44. She was 42 years old. Sorry?
No, she was not Italian.
No, German. She was born in Berlin. But why do I mention it? Because we spoke about the role of women. So the first ordained rabbi was 34, and we thought the Progressive Judaism Reform movement that the first one was the one that was ordained in the States in 1974, but it's not. It was, we discovered this ordained certificate of Regina Jonas that was died in Auschwitz.
Right. We will go to the discussion, but thank you very much. And now we go to Chiara.
Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, because hearing from you, I understand there's so much to learn and so many things in common, even being part of different religions. I'm here to tell you and to share my personal experience of a woman, of a mother, and in the institutional church. And as a volunteer, I will talk about apostolate in my life and the way of how I managed to integrate all this together. The image that first came, I'm sorry for my English, but I have to go with what I had. The image that came to my mind when Federica asked me to come here was the relic of the foot of Maria Magdalena in the church of San Giovanni Laterano, San Giovanni de Fiorentini here in Rome. It's written under the first foot to have stepped on Christ's tomb after his resurrection. And I like the story of Maria Magdalena because it's a story of conversion. And when I was young, I wasn't so involved in the church as many teenagers. But with me, as with Maria Magdalena, Jesus forgave her, and she became the very good friend of Jesus and her disciple. And she has been in the most important moments of his life. And now she is saint. So maybe the first part, we are there, and I can't also reach the other part. But what is important is also that God has chosen a sinner and a woman to be the testimony of the most shocking event in the history, that is the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth. And obviously, when I say this story to men, they always say, because God knows well women, and they know that if they are not able to keep secrets. So it was the best way to communicate well. So I told you what Maria Magdalena has to do with me. Pope Francis calls her Apostle of Apostles. And this is what I try to be, an apostle. And it's relieving to know that Jesus doesn't look for perfect witnesses, but he looks to people, he asks to be served from people that sincerely love him. And this is motivating and inspiring too. You all know that women are present in the most important moments of Jesus' life. And I feel that this is not a coincidence, but it means that women in the church have a special mission. So I have to tell you that 15 years ago, I was working as a director in I was an editorial director of a monthly magazine, and unexpectedly I was asked to become director of communication office for Italy for one of the most powerful congregation and movement for this century that was living a special moment of crisis caused from the behavior of the founder. And at that time, women wouldn't arrive, it was very rare to have at such level women. And so I was in the meeting, in the conference, I was the only woman among priests of all different nationalities. And I used to say my world was in black and white. I have to say that kindness was never lacking to me. They have been all very nice, always, but I was feeling the difficulty in the relationship. And I had never worked with priests before, so and at that time, women wouldn't share the car, wouldn't go in the same car with priests, wouldn't share meals, and would avoid familiar attitudes. So I remember when I had my first meeting with the priest that was my partner in the work, and I had to present my first relazione, my first work, and I sent it to him, and I did it with all my heart, and I put pictures, colors, and I thought it was beautiful. I sent it to him, and the day after I checked my email, and it was completely transformed. No pictures, no colors. And he comes, and I said, Father, he was very funny person, young and very intelligent. And so he explains me why, and he said, like this, it's more clear. And I go, I feel like two computers trying to communicate, a Windows and a Mac. And if you know, at that time, Windows and Mac couldn't communicate. So I start to understand that women and men were two different planets. But in the second meeting, he shows me a video which was it's very hilarious, and I hope you have the chance to see it if you didn't see it. The Tale of Two Brains, explaining the difference between male and female. Yeah, exactly. That's it. The difference between male and female brains. And so I realized that it wasn't only my difficulty, it was also his difficulty. And he was also discovering that we were two different planets. This is just to say that the challenge I had found in this wasn't this clerical leadership, was due to a lack of knowledge of familiarity in relations making between male and female in the church. And the difficulty had the justification in the formation of the priest, which did not include relationship between male and female. And this was in great part of the church. I have an example. In the beginning of the 19th century, Pope John XXIII wrote in his book, Il Giornale dell'Anima, I think it's the Journal of Soul, that to preserve purity and chastity, he would avoid the company of women and familiarity and confidence with them. And this was like these priests would look, when they say, when we crossed a woman, we had to look somewhere else, look away. But since then, since Pope John XXIII, there have been very many steps forward in the Catholic Church. And as you were saying, they were reflecting also the historical moments of the historical moments were passing with movements of women in Europe. Feminist movements, the right of women to vote. And the same John XXIII, he was an advocate of women's right to vote. After the Second Vatican Council, John Paul II, with his apostolic exhortation, Mulieris Dignitatem, which, if you have time, I suggest. All these are milestones of a revaluation of the role of women in the world in the church, and especially after in the another exhortation apostolica, the Christi Fidelis Laici, John Paul II invites lay people, women and men, to be involved in the church, and also in the priestly formation. There is another un'esortazione post-synodale that's called Pastores Dabo Vobis. They suggest to include, when it's appropriate, women in the formation. So if now I look at new generation after my 15 years, I can tell that the relation between female and men is much more natural. And now that I've stopped working there 2 years ago, and I say that things have deeply changed. Okay. Changes didn't remain. I told you I have an institutional life and a life of volunteering. We have all these documents, but then they didn't remain there, but we started to see it also sul campo, on the words. It wasn't only theory. I remember that at the beginning we had camps with, I work with teenagers. So we had camps for boys, camps for girls. Priests would go to the camp for boys. Consecrated women would go with the camp of girls. And nothing to do with mixing the two. I've been the first having a mixed camp. And because I understood, first of all, when I had boys, they were animals, like speaking, acting. And if women were together, I realized that if girls were there, they would balance. This would balance. The girls would be less sentimental, and the men would be less good. So I said, this is a good point of view. It's true that they're living different moments and they're growing in different moments, but we can have moments together and moments of formation apart. And this is the beginning. It hasn't been easy at all, because if it's difficult, teamwork is difficult in normal life between lay people, it's more difficult between consecrated people and lay people which live different lives and reality. But I must say that I experimented how important this teamwork and this sacrifice to put everybody together is important. Maybe at the end, the liver is a bit aching, yes. But I believe that this vale la pena. It's worth it. Ecco, grazie. This is because I really think that this is because the church is a mystery of communion. And this word is important. If we think that it makes sense, if each identity, man and woman, and also each role, priest, nun, is clear and well defined. Otherwise, there's no communion, real communion. And now I think you all heard that Pope Francis is giving many, it's nominating many women and all this. And this is very, very, very important. And it's a signal, I think, to all religions and to all the world. But if I reconsider now my life in the congregation and my work of the past 15 years, I believe that it's not only what I gave professionally, which is important, but in that special period of suffering and of the priest and the consecrated moment, okay? It's being a mother, a friend, and a sister of all of them. I live in Florence, so I was going up and down because I had 2 children. Then I had 3 other children that weren't mine, that were living because the father died, so they were living to my house. So I had to match all this, run to Rome, come back, and I had plenty of work, and the work was all exploding because it was a situation of crisis. So it was creativity situation. But I felt the suffering, even if no one would ever complain in the situation, I felt the suffering of the people. And my door was always open. And when I saw someone coming and starting to talk, I said, I have to leave my job. But I felt inside that this was the most important part of what I was doing. And I read once this phrase of Father Francis, Pope Francis, which explains my feeling. Women show us that the meaning of life is not found in making things, but in taking things to heart. Only those who see with the heart see things properly, because they know how to look into each person. This bringing things to heart and look inside person, it's something that motivates me in all the work, in all my apostolic work. When family and parents take me their children and are talking, special parents, about the difficulty they have with the teenagers, I always want to watch them in the eyes, because I can understand much more deeply what's going on. And that look gets into my heart. And when things get in the heart, then Jesus benediction. So every day I understand more and more how much responsibility we women have in a society for this typical capacity to take care, to generate, and to give ourselves. And I was reading before in the panel, I trust that this is the reason why there are more women involved in charity and in spiritual life, for this particular sensibility. And but I have to say about the fact that Pope Francis is nominating many women, etc. It's not a I believe it's not a competition of roles between men and women who gets more position or the most higher or prestige, but the complementary of function that arises to the different psychology. I think I have to be quick, but the other day, a month ago, I participated to convegno, to a meeting, and there was a doctor. She was a psychologist, and she was telling the difference that the neuroscience studied the difference, what was happening in a woman when she became pregnant, at what was happening in a man when the child was born. And it's impressive how when I heard this, I said, it's impressive, and we cannot think there is a God that wants things to be female and male when you see all this. I can't now enter in this, but there were so
similar.
No, different, because woman has, I say it in the men's way. Allora, there are hormones of the woman that prepare the woman to the birth so that they can feel less pain and they have more strength. This was one of the examples. For men, on the other hand, testosterone would go lower, so that
it's inverse, but
it's inverted, so that the man leaves space to the mother to take care of his child. And this is beautiful. It was very interesting, all that, and it explains us how important and complementary the figures are, the two roles are. And then the rest you all know together about, on your own, the multitasking of women. I experimented this the whole time. I was doing the boxes, I was doing millions of things, and I would tell the priest, why don't we do this? And then we do that, and he would say, one thing at a time. And then, so I felt okay. And when we did, I have like everybody, a family group, WhatsApp group. And so I have a boy and a girl. If I send this one, I said, how is everybody? What are you doing? And Giovanni answers, okay. And she never felt sending a video of the daughter, a video, because boys no switch his phone. I don't know what's going on, but men are essential. And women, that's the reason why of my PowerPoint was black and white. So there are psychologists different, and the Pope says it's a matter of integrating the woman's way of thinking in the church, way of thinking of seeing things. So as Miriam, is it right, was saying before, I always also felt, and as baptized, this is the reason, that I had a personal mission in my life. I told you I wasn't, something is typical, you're born with it, like the capacity to take care of others. I always had it. I started with my brothers, and then I was a nurse of Red Cross, so I've been always doing this. But doing it for God arrived later with the conversion. But I can recognize that Jesus gave me a mission, and it's a specific mission that depends on me. And to each baptized has his own mission. There is a universal one or a particular one. Mothers have also the one of taking care of the family, and being doctors can be in your profession. And mine was the one of taking care of teenagers, because of the fact that I had experienced in my life how difficult those moments are for ourselves and for the parents also, because I gave troubles also to my parents. And it depends on also, and it's for you because of your personal history of life. And when I say it depends on me, it's not because I'm mad, maybe also, but it's not because I'm completely crazy, but it's also because I feel that that situation is given to me. And if I don't do it, no one will do it. As I brought to conclusion, I can say that women have not found as a woman, I haven't found great difficulties compared to what I hear other women in other religions have. but I have experienced a particular challenge when I had to overcome the clericalism that is particularly prevalent in Italy and in Europe. Clericalism is that situation where priests tend to control everything and leave no room to the apostolic creativity of the lay people. I don't know if you heard about it, but Pope Francis is always, in his homily, he always admonishes priests on this point. But at the same time, he invites lay people to be protagonists of their life, not to just wait that the priest says you what to do or not to do. And this, I have to thank the movement, the Regnum Christi movement that prepared me in that sense. Also to preach when it was necessary, to speak to the parents and to be brave and to take my testimonials as to be protagonists of my mission and of my situation, which is not common. Now, if I say that the gifts tell me to preach, others in other situation, they say, women say, no, I would never do it. I had to do it. I did it. The good sense, but okay. Va bene. Aspetta un secondo solo e poi chiudo. Just a second. So if time is by, it's fine because I didn't realize nothing. Okay, va bene, niente. Allora I cut all this part out, but I want to say something. The other day I was in Paris with my children, and my daughter was explaining me. I was explaining his son. He had to get prepared for an interview, that he had to avoid from his CV everything that had to do with his faith, and that if he was asked something about his faith, he had the right not to answer. Now, this made me think that we are all talking about freedom, and but we cannot, in a multicultural society, we can't speak of freedom if we're not free to testimony and speak of our faith. Now we are, I work with young ones, so they can say, yeah, they feel free in dressing how they want and saying what they want, but then you are not able to explain your faith. So I believe this is a responsibility that we women have nowadays, and no matter the religion we come from, especially for this characteristic we have of being mediators and take care, and we have to start to do it, starting from our families, from our place of work, and from other, and so on, because we can build peace, and we women have we can do it. I mean, we can stand up for many things, and I think starting to explain the new generation the different point of view of the different religion is the way to preserve from fundamentalism and from radicalism, and the way not include. If each religion serves a real God, they can't be war. We can talk, and they can't be imagination. Otherwise, we were serving an idol, and I think that this is not what we want. So if we see that something is not going, I mean, we have to ask ourselves if we are still serving the God of peace. I end up with this phrase of Pope Francis: women are givers and mediators of peace, adding that they should be fully included in decision-making process. When women share their gift, the world finds itself more united and more peaceful. Every step forward for women is a step forward for humanity as a whole.
That was beautiful, and I know you have to respond to each other. So I'll just give it to you. We will cut on the coffee time. Go.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you. And what I'm going to say now is actually what I really came from, really came for this conference, the thing that I want to say now, and it matches, it's
I felt
Job
the
said.
same thing.
But now I think you will all be surprised. I'll tell you, and I came for this. Look, there is in the beginning of our Torah, it's a very universal text, not even one Jew, not nothing, only chapter 12, Abraham appears as he's not a Jew, he's Ivri, Hebrew, something has to do also with Hebrew language, never mind. But no Jews know nothing. The first 11 chapters in the Hebrew Testament or Hebrew Bible,
Yeah, the Bible.
it's totally universal because the most universal idea is that one God created everyone. Me and my enemy, me and the opposite of me. We came from the same source, like in a family. You know, you can have a brother, sister that is totally opposite than you, but you came from. Now look, in Hebrew, one is echad. The verb to unify is le'ached. It's a little bit similar in Spanish, uno, unidad. But the fact that there is one God says in its essence of these three letters that everything is united, even if it's opposite to me. There is one God that created Moses and the people of Israel, and also Pharaoh, who enslaved them and killed them. So it's the same source. We have to understand this. So in Hebrew, I took here the translation, I'm telling you, kills the essence. Those who read in translations, the text of the Torah misses everything. And that's why this idea cannot be spread all over, because it comes and you need teachers to teach it. And I came here really to tell you this. Look, the word Adam and Eve, Adam is the word in Hebrew. Adam, here, and I'll tell you why. Dam in Hebrew, dam is blood. And Adama, you just make a vowel of the same letters. Adama is earth. Adam is a creature that comes from earth and has blood. So a woman is not like this. And then you take these translations and you see, I'll tell you, if I take, there is chapter 5, there is this verse. It's here, it's verse 2, sorry, 5:2. Male and female created he them and blessed them and let's say made them Adam in the day when they were created. Male and female were created, blessed as one body, and this body from earth and blood was called Adam. So you cannot say that a woman is not Adam, she has blood and she has a body from earth. So, and he created men and women as one body. That's why we have this operation later. You know, if you know the story. But of course, we have to study it word by word, and you will find the message that this prophecy gives you. That first of all, Adam is a creature, that the name Adam is for men and women together. And what happened in the translation, you know? In a translation, for example, when it says,
God created
Lord, the man, then the Lord God formed, it's written, men of the dust of the ground. But in Hebrew, if you read in Hebrew, it says Adam. It says, Vayitzer Elohim et ha'adam afar min ha'adama. They translated Adam to men. Why? They translated it to men, and men, especially, immediately, it's a masculine body. Who says he created men and women together?
And they say uomini e donne Dio li creò. Not a woman and man. So it's true. I understand
In
this,
the
but then in
beginning,
the
it was
Bible,
one
it says-
body.
yeah.
In the beginning, it was one body. Then God said, I don't know, let's separate it. And there is great reasons for this, not written, but we have to dive to that. That's why we should be divers, divers. Show the men how to dive. So every time, I have your examples, but I don't want to take the time, that when it's written men in English or in other translations, in Hebrew, it says Adam. I hear all, it's Adam, it's for both. But now I want to say something more even important, not more, but connected to this. Look, you say about women, very nice things. I know women, they're very far from this. Come on, come on. Let's be women post-body. There is a feminine energy and there is a masculine energy. And that's why this man in the birth, aside his wife of giving birth, it can feel this energy that comes from a female body. Because once upon a time, we were one body, but to be one body and to feel the other is not, it's not a problem. You are one. That's why I put this photo on my book. Here is the living soul. This is not a precise photo. You know why? Because the candles should have been different, very different, because here it would be the same. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. If here it's different, if you have a small one candle and a big one and a cracked and a straight, doesn't matter. When? Because this is the living soul, this is the physical world. But everyone has this breath of life that God blew in us, and then we can elevate what Chiara said, talked about the teenagers. You elevate the separation in the physical world, and you are becoming like this with them.
Livia, you want to react?
Yeah. So just a sentence. So Adam has to do with awareness, with allowing ourselves the whole, how do you say, keshet? The whole,
What? Keshet?
the whole range of feelings. There are some feelings that is only for men and range of feelings that it's only for women. It's both, and the new age, in a very good sense of it, the new human being has to come to this balance between the feminine energy, awareness, and that's what we have to learn about. What does it mean? And the masculine energy, and to have both balanced in every body, It's because I know women that totally, one minister in Israel government also. Thank you.
Livia,
Now, of course, I don't want to enter in a theological field because it's not my personal competence, and so I wanted to bring here my personal experience in involvement and empowerment of women within a religious community that can be beyond, of course, the religious role. Like maybe we heard about also in Catholic, in the Catholic Church, to interpreting and finding the way of being consistent with the traditional identity, and on the other hand, giving personal contribution. So that's perhaps what I do think, at least I do. I mean, I'm involved as a voluntary in the Jewish institutions, and I try to give my competences and also to make the project that I am doing and proposing consistent with our Jewish identity tradition in Italian Jewry, because I do think that the most important thing, Mira was talking about unity. It's not to divide. I mean, I do think that the best thing to do is to testimony and to give my personal contribution within my traditional way of interpreting the community. I mean, we are here from 22 centuries. I do think that women can have their role interpreting in a modern and contemporary way, but I'm not, and now I am thinking about my other part of life. I do think, yes, there is a women kind of interpretation of the way of conducting life and relationship. But I would like to be considered by my competences and not by my gender. So that's what I do think. So I mean, and maybe that having a women representative within traditional institution is the way of empowering also the potential of women as persons and not as women, not as men. So that's why I do think that because of course I choose to have a profession in medicine, so it's not my personal vocation to be in a religious goal. But I do think that the most important thing is that also within the traditional institution, women can have new confidence, new empowerment. In fact, also in the most Orthodox communities nowadays, women study, women have voice. Of course, it's not as much as men, but we are starting to hear also voices of women within the also Orthodox communities, not only on topics traditional for women, but also on law, on aspects of Judaism that depends on study, on deepening, as we were saying, within the culture. So I do think that that's the way, and it's a modern and contemporary path that we women all together have to struggle. Of course, it's not easy. But I do think we will succeed. I mean, we are so multitasking that we can succeed in doing something different and giving though the sensibility on the male part of the world that they can trust. So it's also a matter of trust, of reciprocal trust. So it's a very, very difficult work, but I do think it's worth doing.
Yeah, I agree completely with this, and I have a personal experience. When I was working in the congregation, I told it was black and white, everything was black and white. What maybe you don't know, it was also a question for them of authority. They always have a superior. So when I have to present, I have to suggest something. Sometimes I receive this answer: I don't have to obey to you, but to my superior. And I started thinking, saying, it's not a question of authority, it's a question of competence. And these things start to get inside. Now, in the years, things have changed, but it is like this. And I think that this is the message of the Pope.
In all fields,
because the past 2 days, he nominated 3 women. One is a lay people and 2 nuns. And then there are others that are Sottosegretari, which is very high level. And Pope Francis changed a document so that the woman could be in the Vatican. And it's not just a matter of filling places, but he's saying it to think, and it's not even of feminism, but it's of capacity and of way of doing things. Processes in the church are slow, but are important. And I think that the church, you can be in or out of Catholic Church, but has the the privilege, not the privilege, the, come si dice,
Yeah.
the church saying, preserving the role of the woman and of also of the man, the identity, is giving a message important also to the other religion and against a mentality of fluidity. I work with young ones, so I know how much risk there is in this thing, in this way of thinking that everything is the same. And I told you before, there can be no communion without identity. And I think this is something that Pope Francis is doing well, even if you think or not in the same tone.
Thank you very much. We are gonna take a 10 minutes break for the coffee, coming back at 11:10. I'm gonna post it and I'm gonna. Okay. Here we are again for our second session. We are now gonna go into the academic part of our meeting. We have 4 amazing speakers. I'm gonna go from my right going there. We have Maria Angelillo Del Carmelo, which is professor of Southern Western Asian culture at the University of Milan, which I really thank for making the trip short notice, despite a zillion of things to do. Gretchen Van Dyke, which has been my partner in crime for this event and many other adventures, especially in the last, basically I've seen more you in the last month and a half than my husband. Was a professor of political science at the University of Scranton, which is also responsible for this part of the project. Marina Voicu, a professor from the Romanian Academy of Science, who was brave enough to come to Troy in April, and then now here also again at the short notice. And last but not least, Bridget Curtin Frame, who also short notice made the trip all the way from Scranton, and she is also professor of theology and religious studies.
Right.
And I would say try to keep it in maybe 10 minutes so we can have fruitful discussion. Shall we start with biblical studies?
Yeah.
And then an overview, Malina, and then you, and then Bridget. Okay, off we go.
Oh, okay, I'm biblical studies.
Yes, you are biblical studies.
Yes,
Are you?
okay, all right. It's nice to see all of you and to be here in Rome. And so I'm going to talk about 2 different perspectives, assuming I have time. One, kind of a biblical historical viewpoint, and secondly, some of my lived experience as a Catholic woman academic in a university that's run by the Jesuits. Okay, so I'll start with the biblical historical. So I taught, I teach mainly in the New Testament, but more broadly in both Hebrew Bible and New Testament. I teach repeatedly an introduction to the Bible, and then I do teach courses in women in the Bible. And one of the textbooks that I use frequently is Primer Kinsky's Reading Women in the Bible. And one thing that she says that I think is striking is that, of course, the Bible is it comes from a thoroughly patriarchal culture. It's patriarchal in the writing of the text and in the collection of the text. But it's remarkable, given that the number of women in these documents, both as characters, in stories, and in imagery, how many there are. So the characters such as Ruth, Sarah, Hagar, to just name 3 in the Hebrew Bible, and the imagery such as Lady Wisdom and Lady Jerusalem. So that just to name 2. So they're definitely there. And I think it's important to recognize that. And I think really, what's the task of feminist interpretation of the Bible is really uncovering those stories that are often just passed over. So for instance, the idea that God appears to Hagar, I mean, that Hagar has an encounter with God, most people forget about that. And in the New Testament, I want to echo something that was said. In the New Testament, women are the trusted members of Jesus's entourage, so to speak, Jesus's group. So Mary Magdalene, as was mentioned earlier, there are 4 accounts of Jesus's life. They're known as the Gospels. They differ from each other in a number of important ways, but all of them record that the first person to see the empty tomb and the first person to encounter the risen Christ was Mary Magdalene. And she was the one who went back, at least in most of the accounts. In Mark's account, the women run away in fear and say nothing to anyone. But in the other ones, it's always Mary Magdalene and her companions who go to the apostles. That's the reason why Pope Francis calls Mary Magdalene the apostle to the apostles. And I actually think he got that from somebody else. But anyway, so moving on, in the accounts of the earliest Christian communities, we find that women played important roles in founding and leading various communities. So when Paul writes to the small group of Christians in the city of Corinth, he writes because Chloe, the leader of one of those communities, wrote to him or sent a message to him saying, what do we do? This is happening. So it's obvious that she had a leadership role. Acts of the Apostles records that Priscilla and Aquila, a couple, were missionaries with Paul. Paul greets in his letter to the Roman Christians, he greets a woman named Junia as an apostle. And just a note about apostles. And the word comes from the Greek that means to be sent out. So it's not just somebody who follows Jesus, it's someone who does Jesus' work. And so to accord that title to that woman suggests that she had a very high stature in the community. So there is evidence, and of course, there are several references in parts of the New Testament to women deacons. And this actually has been recognized by the Vatican, like they did the full study and said that, and there is evidence from the early church post-New Testament of women deacons serving the church. So the existence of women deacons in the early church is pretty well established. So, and again, this is it's a job of uncovering, really, uncovering things that were simply not recognized or somehow passed over. And so I'll give one. So in Catholicism throughout early history, early Christian history. Sorry, let me go back. There's evidence throughout early Christian history that supports the leadership activity of women. And they founded and led religious communities and institutions. And I'll just give you one example that's sort of fun, because I am named after Saint Bridget of Kildare, an Irish saint. And unlike the more well-known Irish saints who gets a big parade in March, she actually was born in Ireland. So, and actually her feast day was just declared a national holiday in Ireland. So she founded a large abbey and led this abbey, and the abbey in Kildare that was founded and led by her included, as in many Irish abbeys, included both men and women. And so she was the abbess of communities of both men and women. So it wasn't that unusual to have a woman in charge of a women's abbey, but she was in charge of an abbey that had both men and women communities. There is a legend, okay, that she was reputed to have been consecrated as a bishop. That's in the realm of legend, but nonetheless, her leadership is not that unusual. So we have Hildegard, we have all kinds of examples of women who lead large institutions within the church. Just fast forward to Catholicism in the US. So this is not my area of expertise, but I do know this in just having done quite a bit of reading. In the 19th century, women religious were sent to the frontier. They were sent to the territories that were not quite part of the United States yet. They were sent out with the pioneers and all those people to establish schools and hospitals. Many of the first universities to educate women were founded by sisters. And so many of you might be familiar with a very famous medical institution in the United States, the Mayo Clinic. It's located in Rochester, Minnesota. And now I'm not sure dates, late 19th or early 20th century, this town of Rochester, Minnesota was devastated by a tornado. And there were sisters there who had founded a small hospital, and they convinced the Mayo brothers to establish a clinic associated with the hospital so that the people of this area could have, good medical treatment, because they didn't have enough doctors to treat all of the injured after this great catastrophe. But it was the sisters who ran St. Mary's Hospital who really convinced the Mayo brothers that they needed to establish a clinic there. And of course, that became the Mayo Clinic, which is famous all over the world. So that's just an example of the leadership that women have accomplished. Okay, so where am I? Okay. All right, so just in terms of my lived experience. Catholic women have been studying theology and getting advanced degrees at least from the beginning of the 20th century. But as feminism became more mainstream, probably in the 60s and 70s, more women enrolled in theological graduate schools and in seminaries. There were more women with advanced degrees in theology by the 1980s. And I have to say, I was in graduate school in the 1980s at a Jesuit university. I've been associated with Jesuit University since I was an 18-year-old undergraduate. And I was the only woman in my graduate program in biblical languages and literature. Now, I would say women in graduate theological programs, women and men, are about on par. But the interesting thing that happens, so I also took a number of my courses at a Lutheran seminary. And there were quite a few women in their programs as well. what's interesting is most of those women, of course, were ordained and went to serve their churches. And it wasn't I wasn't really, I had done work in a parish as a religious education director that, it's not my calling. But what's interesting is when you look at professors in Protestant universities, professors in like Protestant theological schools, as opposed to professors in Catholic theology departments. There are more women in the Catholic theology departments and teaching in Catholic seminaries than there are in Protestant ones, mainly because the root of ministerial leadership wasn't really open. And so many Catholic theologians, instead of going to, active ministry, went to academic theology, and they now teach in, Catholic seminaries have, I don't think there's a single one in the United States that does not have a woman full-time professor. And in many cases, because of the decline in priestly vocations, many of the faculty in the seminaries are now lay people. And that's not just in the United States. I have a colleague that I work with pretty regularly in Ireland, and he teaches at the National Seminary and now the majority of faculty at this National Seminary in Ireland, which had always had this reputation of being, sort of the spearhead of conservative Catholicism, now has, I wouldn't say majority women teaching, but there are a good number. So you could not be trained as a priest now without having a woman professor, which I think is a really important step forward. Also, in terms of leadership, so my colleague mentioned, he has, of course, as a priest, he has a spiritual director. His spiritual director is a woman. And that is not uncommon. It would have been unthinkable as I forgot. Kira. Yes, Kira, yes. As Kira said, you work in black and white, and all of these priests have never had any kind of interaction with women. And now I would say that you could not go through priestly formation without interacting substantially with women, either as fellow students, or let me say, and here I am having trouble with English, and as formation personnel. So I think the leadership of the church has changed a lot, and I think just understanding that there's always been women leaders in the church will also change the way the Catholic Church sees leadership. Yeah. Was I on time?
Are we?
Yeah, no, sorry.
So my turn?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here. That's very nice, and I have to say it's very helpful from my research to be here and to understand very different point of view coming from very different religion. I'm sociologist of religion, among other kind of sociology, but I'm concerned mainly with the relationship between religion, being religious, and gender role attitudes. This is what I did in the past, and I looked how being religious and being observant, going to church and praying has an impact on how you think about gender roles. So that was my past work. And what I found out in the past was that as societies developed over time in the past 30 years, 40 years, the impact of being religious on how you understand gender roles and gender equality changed, so diminished, basically. But now I had the opportunity with this project to look on how women leadership and gender roles basically differs from one religion to another. So before that, I looked mainly to Christian denominations. Now I have the opportunity to understand the mechanisms behind this relationship between being religious and how you understand and conceive gender roles. And therefore, this is a very important experience for me to be here and to understand how this relationship is framed in different religious contexts. So, having said that, I have to say that the role of women in religion from the sociological point of view depends on individual level factors. So how do we as individuals think about gender roles and what men and women should do or shouldn't do? And that's one level. And also it depends on the context, on the institutional and organization, religious organization in which we are embedded. So we are living in a kind of religious context, and how do we understand gender roles depends also on the institutions and what on the context around us. And one example in this respect is the difference that we can notice between United States and Europe. United States, it's more religious than Europe is. I would rather say Europe is more secularized than other place in the world. So to put it in a correct context. But when you look to position that women have in churches in the United States and Europe, you will notice that they are more active, involved, and at the top level in the United States as compared to Europe. And I think one of the factors that plays an important role here is the fact that most of countries in Europe are religious monopolies. So you as an individual don't have opportunity to choose between one denomination and another. And usually this religious reconversion is not very often encountered in Europe. So once you are born in one religion, the likelihood to switch to another is quite low. And that makes religious organization not very keen to fight to get to become more attractive towards women, because they are in any case more observant and highly religious as compared to men. So they will go to church anyway, and they belong to a church in which we were born, so no need to attract them further. So I think that's one of the things that can be employed to explain why churches in the United States are more active in attracting women and empowering them. Another thing that by now I didn't put it in the outside Christian framework is how these different religious traditions think and conceive the gender equality. So what gender equality means, and for, let's say, traditional Christian churches like Catholic Church and Greek Orthodox Church that I belong to, versus Protestant churches. And today it came obvious to me that Judaism is the same path. So what is the difference between these two two religious pathways? So I think in both traditions, women are obviously important in religion. They play an important role in both, in Catholic and Orthodox Church and Greek Orthodox Church, and versus Judaism and Protestant churches. But while Judaism and Protestant churches conceive gender equality as equality in all respects, so meaning that we are equal and we should do the same things. We should, there are no specific gender roles for women and men. We are equal and we do the same, yeah? While when we think to Catholic and Greek Orthodox Church, well, we are equal, but in a specialized way, yeah? So we are specialized in being kind, emotional as women, and we are specialized in being leaders as men. So, well, that was something that I learned today. So the two different religious traditions, let's say the two paths, because they are not traditions. One is, well, yeah, they have a different way of understanding gender roles, which leads to different roles of women inside churches. Yes, it's not that we don't have women leaders in the Catholic Church. They play an important role, but it's not on the official hierarchy of the church. It isn't on the official hierarchy of the church, let's say, only in case of nuns, which are kind of out of regular situation. So it's not embedded in the daily life. And now I have a hypothesis, and I will end with this. I have a hypothesis that I didn't check it yet, but that's a thing that I have to do for sure. So what differs in case of Catholic and Greek Orthodox Church as compared to Protestant and Judaism? And as I learned today, I knew about Protestants, but I didn't know about Judaism. And I learned today that in this case, you don't need a special person to connect you to God. So you as an individual are directly connected to God, yeah? And then there is nobody, you are, women are ordained, because, and then they perform ceremonies and so on, but their role is as, or the role of any priest is as a teacher, yeah? To teach you, to show you the way, but not necessarily to connect you to God. You can do that by yourself. Well, while if we look to Catholic and the Greek Orthodox Church, you need the priests to get connected to the God. And that's something that it seems it's not allowed to really. It's just a hypothesis that came to my mind today by listening to this. Yeah. Okay, so I think in any case, it seems that there are two different paths, different ways of understanding gender equality promoted by different religious traditions that leads to different roles of women in churches. And well, that's, I think, work in progress for myself. And thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to move on this. So this is what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Malina. And I would have Maria.
Yeah. So actually talking about the status of women in relation to Indian religions is not easy. And in 10 minutes, it's even more difficult because it actually forces to make a rather articulated series of distinctions. especially in relation to what we call Hinduism, and we call Hinduism for simplicity's sake, one-sided outlining the role of woman is almost impossible. Because in Hinduism, we don't have a church, we don't have a central authority. Hinduism is, in fact, it's not a religion as we are used to understand religion. I mean, it's not like Christian or Judaism or Islam. Hinduism, when we use the term Hinduism, we do not refer to a unitary dogmatic religion with the number of fixed, unchanging characteristics. In what we call Hinduism, but which actually is not called Hinduism by the people who consider themselves to belong to this religious and spiritual landscape, because they call Sanatana Dharma, which means Sanatana, eternal, Dharma, its norm, rule. So in what we call Hinduism, a large number of philosophical, devotional, ritual, cultic currents merge. So it's more a composite system of beliefs. And this complex spiritual phenomenon called Hinduism presents many different and original elements and few shared concepts that in fact are common to all Indian religions. So if we have to give a definition, Hinduism would fall under that of orthopraxis. A Hindu is not such because he or she believes in a certain number of dogmas, but because he follows a certain practice, a dharma, a norm, a rule, a behavior. But the point is that this rule, this behavior, this rule of conduct changes according to each person, and during the lifetime of every single person keeps on changing according to age and according to the role played in society, and of course dharma, this norm, changes according to gender. Caste is decisive in determining the content of individual practice. And according to Brahmanical point of view, the role of women is described by their subordination to men. Women are generally considered by both the Brahmanical and Jain tradition, as well as by Theravada Buddhism, so the oldest school of Indian Buddhism, to be a threat to man's spiritual progress. The laws of Manu, which is the cornerstone of the Christly vision of what human life should be, according always to the Brahmanical point of view, states how the father should protect and control the woman in childhood, the husband in youth, and the son in old age. Woman is never supposed to enjoy any form of independence. The text says that she has to be protected, and we would expect that this protection is from something which comes from outside, but actually it is not. The woman is not to be protected by her male relatives from external threats, but rather from herself. The feminine is the bearer of incessant activity, devoid of consciousness. She is subject to the dominance of the senses and associated with desire. Woman must be protected so from her uncontrollable sexual drives, which is a menace to the family and to the universe in a larger scale. So the Hindu mythological repertoire is eloquent in describing women as the supreme source of distraction, capable of consuming the spiritual strength, the spiritual power, the ascetic power, both of gods and men. The female power of seduction shocks and frightens. We may say that woman is not subordinate to man because she lacks power, but on the contrary, because she is the holder of a power that is difficult to dominate and to order. The most ancient grammatical school of philosophy, the Sankhya Darshan, states that at the basis of all reality, there are two ultimate principles. So there is not a God who creates the world, who emanates the world. There are two ultimate principles, two very last principles. One is the Purusha, the male principle, and is a principle of pure consciousness, devoid of activity and never involved in the dynamism and play of matter, of nature. Pure consciousness. The other principle is the prakriti, the nature, we may say. Natura naturante, we say in Italian. It's the nature, it's the matter, and she is characterized by activity, but devoid of consciousness. And from prakriti, from this female principle, all reality emanates. Because it's the matter, actually. So many later developments in the Hindu tradition derive from the metaphysical framework of Sankhya Darshan, of this ancient darshan, school of philosophy, like yoga, Ayurveda, for example, Tantra, just to name a few. So from the Sankhya framework, we derive a certain number of principles. First of all, the feminine is indispensable to the reality, to the existence of manifestation, as much as the Purusha, as much as the masculine principle. But all material reality derives from the feminine, which implies and suggests the creative function of the feminine principle. The function of Prakriti is to show Purusha, the male principle, which is the soul, her own otherness. She has to show Purusha that she's different from him and that Purusha is never involved in the activity of the nature, of the matter. Why she has to show this? Because the cause of all pain, according to the Sankhya Darshan, is when the consciousness seems to be involved in the activity of nature, an activity it never takes part in. So liberation is the main and the only goal for Hindu school of philosophy, all of them. Liberation depends on the soul recognition of its non-involvement in the game of Prakriti, in the play of Prakriti. Prakriti therefore finds her own negation, in her own negation, her raison d'être. She is important, she is necessary because she has to show the male principle that he does not participate to her activity, is free from the game of nature. Indian tradition suggests that untamable female power is essentially tamed only through an instrument, which is marriage. The only way to discipline, to tame this female power devoid of consciousness is marriage. And in Hindu mythology, this is made very, very clear. Hindu goddesses are divided into the so-called goddess of the breast, the beautiful, the womanly models, the brides of the great Hindu gods, the virtues, and the goddess of the truth, warrior, virgins, to whom the gods, the male god, entrust the bloody and therefore the impure, contaminating, defiling destruction of the terrible anti-gods. So in mythology, we have women serving two functions, brides or warrior. And the warrior are virgins and are asked to do the job male gods do not want to do, because they don't want to be contaminated by this job. And the Sankhya use a beautiful, according to me, metaphor to explain the role of this female principle we were talking about. Prakriti, the female principle, is like a dancer. So the Sankhya Darshan says, just as a dancer withdraws from the stage once she has presented her performance to the audience is the Purusha, the male principle, so the Prakriti withdraws after she has manifested herself to the soul. She lavishes health in various forms, and endowed with qualities, she works regardless of her own interest for the sake of the soul, which for its part, the soul is devoid of qualities, is only consciousness, and is concerned with nothing and no one. The male principle is concerned only with himself. There is nothing more delicate than Prakriti, I think. I think is the author of Sankhya Darshan, not me. Once she knows she has been seen, no longer exposes herself to the soul gaze. She lives. So the result of the Prakriti of the female principle is to show her difference, her otherness to the male principle. And done this job, she has nothing more to do. She can live. So means that the female, the feminine, is subordinate to the man in the deepest sense. Her same being, existence, serves the male purpose. And in fact, according to Hinduism, woman cannot attain liberation. Liberation, I said before, it's the main and only goal for Hindu people, Ma a woman to reach, to attain liberation, moksha, she has to reborn in a male body. Yeah.
All of a sudden, I feel very lucky. And Judaism model seems extremely progressive.
In the Gospel of Thomas.
Oh, wait. No, because we have a very short period of time
Go
left.
great. Go.
And I'm very excited that we are here. And I thank partners like Fed and colleagues like all of you and people here in Europe and friends at home in the United States who supported me in this project and helped me to reach others here in Rome and other places to present this important section of our large grant project. You know, this section examining women and religion examines the role of religion on both continents, the United States and here in Europe, and recognizing that women may be among the most devout spiritual members of various denominational communities and active leaders in countless faith-based efforts and causes at all levels of society, from the grassroots to the international level. And I, as a political scientist who studies international relations, who teaches a course on women in the global community, this international level and the role of women internationally is really important to my own thinking, my own research, and my own teaching. And let me just say this, as a Catholic woman, I think of the great saints, the female saints on both continents, people like Elizabeth Ann Seton and Mother Cabrini and Catherine Drexel, and here in Europe, Catherine of Siena, Teresa of Avila, Joan of Arc, right? These great women. But one of my favorite religious women, someone I was introduced to in graduate school, is the 13th century Christine de Pizan, born in Venice, a lay French Renaissance writer and mystic, feminist extraordinaire, well ahead of her time, presenting an image of women who not only were entitled to their own room, which we later associate with Virginia Woolf and her writing in the United States, but they designed and ran all aspects of the City of Ladies, much to the chagrin of the entire church at the time, and especially most men of the time as well. Talking 13th century. In a much more modern 20th century context, I'm extremely admiring of people like Dorothy Day, the political activist, and well known for her the early 20th century Catholic workers movement, and Simone Weil, the 20th century French philosopher, mystic, political activist, and the impact of her work that continues to resonate with men and women also today. Two powerful poets, Marie Howe, an American Catholic, and Denise Levertov, a British-born American who had gradual conversion from an intellectual political activism to Catholicism. And you see that in her poetry. Marie Howe's poetry is absolutely beautiful as well. All four of these 20th century women are among so many Catholic and Protestant women, and they've found their ways to give voice, especially to people of faith in the world. And not only Catholics and Protestants, but women of faith across denominations and religious traditions. Typically, because I do think as a social scientist and as a political scientist, I think about structures and leadership and the formal role of leadership, and women working societally at the social grassroots level, and then moving upward mobility for women. And here I am talking specifically about Christianity, and obviously there are significant differences between the Catholic Church and various Protestant denominations. And I think this is a really important way to think about this. We cannot deny that women in formal church leadership roles, I mean, that is politically, the political structure, political, not in kind of a negative form, but in the way that politically you organize the way a church operates. And obviously, women, we all know that women may not be ordained in the Catholic Church, and traditionally, historically, from the very beginning, for 200 over 2,000 years, you know, that is the way that you move up in church leadership. It's dominated by the clergy. And so the clericalism, which is kind of that negative impact, you know, it continues to affect us because women are not allowed to be ordained in the Catholic Church. There's significant differences across in the Protestant churches because some Protestant churches now do allow for the ordination of women, and we see women moving up the leadership ladder because they are ordained. You know, and again, it was mentioned earlier and alluded to, you know, how exciting yesterday's news from the Vatican that Pope Francis appointed 3 women to the dicastery for bishops. They will have a responsibility, and that they were among 14 people nominated. So if you take that up, you know, but a third of the people he nominated yesterday for this dicastery, 14, 3 of them were women. Sister Raffaella Petrini is already the Secretary General of the government of the Vatican City State, the second highest position in the Vatican governance. And then another, the Superior General of the Daughters of Mary, another religious woman, and then a lay woman, Dr. Maria Savino, the president of the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations. They will be responsible. Part of the responsibility is to choose the new bishops, and we know that structurally, right, the bishops then become cardinals, and it's the cardinals then who decide who the next pope is, or future popes are. So this is really a significant change, and that comes with the number of nominations in naming Sister Natalie, the co-undersecretary of the Synod of Bishops. All these came in the last, the naming of the secretary of the Pontifical Biblical Commission, Sister Maria, she's the first woman appointed to that office. Sister Alessandra, who's the secretary of the dicastery, the development arm of the Vatican, who also helped run the COVID response from the Vatican's position. A woman who is she's co-secretary of the Pontifical Commission for Latin America and Pontifical Academy of Social Science. She's a lay woman and she's a theologian. And Sister Patricia Murray, who I've been in correspondence with, who was recently named by Pope Francis as the executive secretary of the Rome-based International Union of Superior Generals. That is as I understand it, a 2,000 person organization. That is a huge leadership position for women. And I noted that within the Vatican Yearbook 2022 lists over 12 religious women in various Vatican departments. And that doesn't seem like a lot, and we've just added more women. But you wouldn't have seen any women several years ago. And that is a significant change. And I do think, again, I'm not thinking negatively about politics here, that Pope Francis is opening a door gradually, kind of in a natural way that then draws people in to understanding that women's voices at the table, as feminist scholars would argue. One of my favorites, Cynthia Enlow, she's an American who said, has said internationally, the international is personal, the personal is international. To have women at the table as 50% of the global community, to have those voices there, then changes the perspective that is brought to discussions and future decisions within the church. In terms of the ecumenical movement worldwide, and this is important across, especially of the Protestant world, across North America and Europe, women have had significant roles in the ecumenical movement. The World Council of Churches, the World Lutheran Federation, the Ecumenical Forum of European Christian Women, in part due to the fact that they, in their ordinations, they're allowed to merge as leaders within this broader church, these broader church communities. And the legitimacy of ordination then lends to their expertise in broader international movements. Catholic women on both continents must rely on, again, a Pope like Francis, who is opening that door, and hopefully that will continue to bring women and to bring the laity to the table, that this is the way to kind of disarm and push to the wayside the clericalism that can dominate, and which others have pointed out can be so challenging. Women have always been involved in grassroots movements, and again, Bridget pointed out those women, the women of the Bible, the work that they did. And traditionally, women have ensured that children are raised in the church, in their faith community. The faith community is part of family life, and that's across both continents. In the United States, religious women have played significant roles in providing healthcare, running hospitals, clinics, orphanages, homes for special needs children. I was educated by the Daughters of the Heart of Mary, a very small French group of nuns who came to the United States, to North America. That was my high school education. And I'm very proud to be a graduate of what's called Trinity Washington University, which we call Trinity College. It is the first Catholic women's college that granted degrees, started in 1897 by the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur, a Belgian order of sisters. Their purpose is social justice. They continue, the school continues to educate poor women of the District of Columbia in the DC metropolitan area who would have no other capacity to go to school, to get college degrees, which is upward mobility in American society. I'm very proud of that background. And the role of women in all these areas across the international community. When you look at the European Young Women's Christian Association, the network of 26 NGOs involved in various humanitarian works, the role of religious and lay women. Bridget noted theological training, but just educated women in this last spring, in 6 weeks time, 3 women were named presidents of the 27 colleges and universities run by the Jesuits. 3 women, 6 weeks. They are the leaders, and they join a group of women already in place. Bridget and I are in a very tiny group, maybe 5 at this point of the 27 that are still run by the Jesuits themselves, that still have Jesuit as presidents. Fordham University in New York, Rockhurst University in Kansas City, and Santa Clara University in the Silicon Valley in California. And let me just close by saying this. 2 incredible women, both sides of the Atlantic. Sister Helen Prejean, who has spent her entire adult life since her 20s, addressing the injustices of capital punishment, the use of the death penalty in the United States. Framed in her own deep faith, she reaches out and works on behalf of people of all religious backgrounds, people who have no faith, but who face the death penalty, who are on death row in the United States. She is one of the most powerful women, noted for her work on justice issues. And I'm also really intrigued now by Lucetta Scarafio, the editor, who was the editor of the Women Church World, the monthly glossy publication of the Vatican, an organization, a journalistic enterprise that was entirely women. And she and the staff, editorial staff, resigned in 2019 because the male leadership was trying to dictate what this women's publication was going to do at any given time. And she wrote a letter to the Pope arguing that women's voices were being squashed, and that he planned the new person in charge planning to take over the editor's position in the magazine as well, and limiting the freedom of that staff for staff. She argued it was a retaliation for offering articles regarding the ordination of women, the use of religious women by the clergy, other what we would say women's issues. Again, I think that kind of taking those kinds of political stances, those are examples of women who, regardless of leadership position, are willing to put themselves forward and to make a difference in society. So why don't we finish there? We are short on time here, but I hope we at least can have a
And
little
we
bit.
have 10 minutes for
Conversation.
discussion and questions. Chiara?
I just want to. That the fact of conferences of these, the giving space to women, we don't have to make confusion with thinking that conferences is feminist. Because this is not the point, and not to think that giving more roles to the woman will take him to give, making women please, because this is not going to happen. So he's very clear in this. It's just, as you said, it's just a point of showing another point of view.
Right.
And we don't have to confuse it because there's a lot of rumor about this, but saying why we don't have women police. This will not happen because it's not part of our religion. And it's not a matter of being feminist.
But we like to add something. Look, to be a free person, woman or man, for me, and according to the scriptures also, to this text, it's a religious value. It's a religion to be free and to have a free of choice. The first experience of the man, of human being, of the man, of the Adam, was to choose. God created this wonderful world, Garden of Eden, which of course Eden, God Eden in Hebrew, and Eden, when you translate God Eden to Garden of Eden, what's Eden? It's nothing. But in Hebrew, that's the word. Eden, like Edna. There's a name Edna. Eden is gentleness. It's a noun. It's not gentleness. It was God Eden because it was Garden of Eden. It was in Hebrew, it means it gives the essence of the word. It was a gentle word, no aggression, and vegetarian. Even the animals were vegetarians. Read chapter 1. So that was such a wonderful place. And God put the man, I mean, don't you see Adam, this creature, and he said, now from all the trees eat, enjoy, and everything. But from one tree don't. So he gave him eat, I mean, this creature, the human creature, a free of choice. And then in the end, 10 generations later, brought the flood. The world became so corrupted, you know, and then came the flood and then started all over. All is a metaphor, but the free of choice. We were created with the ability to ruin this Garden of Eden. And God created us like this because He wants us to choose to be with Him, to choose the good, to choose the harmony, to choose the Eden. Because when we choose it, we have the meaning of it, we understand. Because we got the word without understanding. It was, we were given it, but then, okay, what I want to say about women. Why this new wants to choose? This I connect to God, not to the priests, the rabbis, no. They have God also. They have God also. And sometimes they rule against God and they justify it in the name of God. It's like extremists say Allah Akbar and they kill people. How can it be? Allah Akbar, you know, I live in Jaffa, there is the mosque. When I see the Muazzin before it, he said Allah Akbar, I go on the street, I say Amen. Of course Allah Akbar, Akbar is big. We say it in our prayer. We praise Allah as Akbar, as big. Of course, that's the basic who created this world. So we said Allah Akbar, I said Amen. We are one in this. But then it is said after we used to say, I don't know, well, let's keep people, let's keep the Jew. So Allah is trying.
Mira, we have 3 minutes.
No, the one women should do, they don't give you this information. create a community of your own. Say to people,
Who wants to,
let's see, let's pray, let's do, who cares? Who cares? Create your own world, your own freedom. Well, that's in a free world, that's a gift.
3 minutes. So who wants to come in? The last few
Other
words.
questions from you, other comments from you, because we've had plenty of time to talk.
Any questions?
Or comments.
I actually have a question.
ahead.
I have a question for Maria. So, I mean, clearly the position of the woman in Indo is so much more softer than ours. But is there signs of improvement and change as we have seen in the monotheistic religion? I mean, in our two monotheistic religions or not? Is something moving there as well or not?
I wouldn't say that it's worse. Actually, I wouldn't say that woman condition in India is worse than in Europe, in the United
Can't be
States.
liberated as a woman. That's
Because there are so many examples. India has had one woman prime minister when in Europe, in the United States, there was no. It was not even an idea, something with nobody even thought about.
Yeah, but she was daughter of, which is a bit different.
No, and then after that, India had the president of the Republic woman. In Europe, mainly only Finland and few countries had, Italy of course not, United States of course not. And then, before I arrived late, sorry, but I listened what you said at the very end of your speech about the fact that in Europe we can't really express our faith in so many contexts. And then you said that Europe is more secular than United States. I would say that India is much more secular than Europe, because in India, actually, in 1 month, exactly in 1 month, India will celebrate 75 years from independence. And when India became independent from the British rule, in the constitution, they state that Indian state, Indian government has to let each and every citizen of the country to show in freedom his her faith. And this is a big problem with Indian communities in Italy, because they are not allowed to do so. Indian laicism or Indian secularism is the English way, not the French way of secularism. And the point is that state has to protect the right of the citizen to show their faith in all the way possible.
Yeah, I agree with what you say, but I think it's also a point of not knowing enough of other religion and of other culture. That's why I was saying it's our responsibility, not even the problem of the governments, but it's our responsibility starting from the education of our sons and in our school to make know other religions, because we are all afraid of what we don't know. When Federico was saying about emancipation, it's because it's another concept of religion theos. If we look the rules that now we don't have time. Now, women and men in marriage have in our religion, you can find something like this. But because yours, it's more as a philosophy of life. It's not my job, so I don't know much, but I can understand the difference there is between an institutional church and
The fact is that, you know, in India, it's not the problem the woman is inferior to man. The woman is different. is different. This is the point. And she has a great power. But this power is not, coherent with the goal of spiritual life.
And I would say this is a great point to finish and continue discussion at lunch. Thank you, everybody, for having us. Thank you for the European Parliament, and thank you for those who followed us from remote. I will share the link. And let's go and continue at lunch.
Thank you.